It was the night after Tommy had been taken to his first pantomime, and he had been lying asleep in his little bedroom, for now that he was 9 he slept in the night nursery no longer. He had been asleep, when he was suddenly awakened by a brilliant red glare. At first he was afraid the house was on fire, but when the red turned to a dazzling green, he gave a great gasp of delight, for he thought the transformation scene was still going on. "And there's all the best part still to come," he said to himself. But as he became wider awake, he saw that it was out of the question to expect his bedroom to hold all those wonders, and he was almost surprised to see that there was even so much as a single fairy in it. A fairy there was, nevertheless. She stood there with a star in her hair, and her dress shimmering out all around her, just as he had seen her a few hours before, when she rose up with little jerks, inside a great gilded shell, and spoke some poetry which he didn't quite catch. She spoke audibly enough now, nor was her voice so squeaky as it had sounded before. "Little boy," she began, "I am the ruling genius of pantomime fairyland. You entered my kingdom for the first time last night. How did you enjoy yourself?" "Oh," said Tommy, "so much. It was splendid. Thank you." She smiled and seemed well pleased. "I always call to inquire on a new acquaintance," she said. "And so you liked our realms, as every sensible boy does? Well, Tommy, it is in my power to reward you. Every night for a certain time you shall see again the things you liked best. What did you like best?" "The clown part," said Tommy, promptly. For it ought to be said here that he was a boy who had always had a leaning to the kind of practical fun which he saw carried out by the clown to a pitch of perfection which at once enchanted and humbled him. Till that harlequinade he had thought himself a funny boy in his way, and it had surprised him that his family had not found him more amusing than they did. But now he felt all at once that he was only a very humble beginner, and had never understood what real fun was. For he had not soared much above hiding behind doors and popping out suddenly on a passing servant, causing her to jump delightfully. Once, indeed, he used to be able to sell his family by pretending all manner of calamities, but they had grown so stupid lately that they never believed a single word he said. No, the clown would not own him as a follower. He would despise his little attempts at practical jokes. Still, thought Tommy, I can try to be more like him. Perhaps he will come to hear of me some day. For he had never met any one he admired half so much as that clown, who was always in a good temper. To be sure he had everything his own way, but then he deserved to. Always quick and ready with his excuses, and if he did run away in times of danger, it was not because he was really afraid. Then how deliciously impudent he was to the shopkeepers! Who but he would have dared to cheapen a large fish by making a door-mat of it, or to ask the prices of cheese on purpose to throw mud at them? Not that he couldn't be serious when he chose, for once he unfurled a Union Jack and said something quite noble, which made everybody clap their hands for 2 minutes, and he told people the best shops to go to for quantity of things, and he could not have been joking then, for they were the same names that were to be seen on all the hoardings. This will explain how it was natural that Tommy, on being asked what part of the pantomime he preferred, should say, without the slightest hesitation, "Oh, the clown part." The fairy seemed less pleased. "The clown part?" she repeated. "What, those shop scenes tacked on right at the end without rhyme or reason?" "Yes," said Tommy, "those ones." "And the great wood with the shifting green and violet lights, and the white bands of fairies dancing in circles, didn't you like them?" "Oh yes," said the candid Tommy, "pretty well. I didn't care much for them." "Well," she said, "but you liked the grand processions, with all their gorgeous dresses and monstrous figures. Surely you liked them?" "There was such a lot of it," said Tommy. "The clown was the best." "And if you could, you'd rather see those last scenes again than all the rest?" she said, frowning a little. "Oh, wouldn't I just!" said Tommy. "But may I, really and truly?" "I see you are not one of my boys," said the genius of pantomime, rather sadly. "It so happens that those closing scenes are the very ones I have least control over. They are part of my kingdom which has fallen into sad decay and rebellion. But one thing, O Tommy, I can do for you. I will give you the clown for a friend and companion, and much good may he do you." "But will he come?" he asked, hardly daring to believe in such condescension. "He must, if I bid him. It is for you to make him feel comfortable and at home with you. The longer you can keep him the better I shall be pleased." "Oh, how kind of you!" he cried. "He shall stay all the holidays. I'd rather have him than anybody else. What fun we shall have! What fun!" The green fire faded out, and the fairy with it. He must have fallen asleep again, for, when he opened his eyes, there was the clown at the foot of the bed, making a face. "Hullo!" said the clown. "I say, are you the nice little boy I was told to come and stay with?" "Yes, yes," said Tommy. "I'm so glad to see you. I'm just going to get up." "I know you are," said the clown, and upset him out of bed into the cold bath. This he could not help thinking a little bit unkind of the clown on such a cold morning, particularly as he followed it up by throwing a hairbrush, 2 pieces of soap, and a pair of shoes at him before he could get out again. But it woke him, at all events, and he ventured, with great respect, to throw one of the shoes back. It just grazed the clown's topknot. To Tommy's alarm, the clown set up a hullabaloo, as if he were mortally injured. "You cruel, unkind little boy!" he sobbed, "to play so rough with a poor clown." "But you threw them at me first," pleaded Tommy, "and much harder, too." "I'm the oldest," said the clown, "and you've got to make me feel at home, or I shall go away again." "I won't do it again, and I'm very sorry," pleaded Tommy. But the clown wouldn't be friends with him for ever so long, and was only appeased at last by being allowed to put Tommy upside down in a tall wicker basket which stood in a corner. Then he helped Tommy to dress by buttoning all his clothes the wrong way and hiding his stockings and necktie. While he was doing this, Sarah, the under nurse, came in, and he strutted up to her and began to dance quietly. "Go away, imperence," said Sarah. "Beautiful gal," said the clown, though Sarah was extremely plain. "I love her." And he put out his tongue and wagged his head at her until she ran out of the room in a temper. He looked so absurd that Tommy was delighted with him again, and yet, when the bell rang for breakfast, he felt obliged to give his new friend a hint. "I say," he said, "you don't mind my telling you, but mother's very particular about manners at table." But the clown relieved him instantly by saying that so was he, very particular, and he slid down the banisters and turned somersaults in the hall until Tommy joined him. "I do hope father and mother won't be unkind to him," he thought as he went in, "because he does seem to feel things so." But nothing could be more polite than the welcome Tommy's parents gave the stranger, as he came in, bowing very low, and making a queer little skipping step. Tommy's mother said she was always glad to see any friend of her boy's, while his father begged the clown to make himself quite at home. All he said was, "I'm disgusted to make your acquaintance." But he certainly made himself at home. In fact, he was not quite so particular about his manners as he had led Tommy to expect. He volunteered to divide the sausages and bacon himself, and did so in such a way that everybody else got very little, and he himself got a great deal. If it had been anybody else, Tommy would certainly have called this piggish. As it was, he tried to think it was all fun, and that he himself had no particular appetite. His cousin Barbara, a little girl of about his own age, was staying with them just then, and came down presently to breakfast. "Oh my!" said the clown, laying a great red hand on his heart. "What a nice little gal you are, ain't yer? Come and sit by me, my dear." "No, thank you. I'm going to sit by Aunt Mary," she replied, looking rather shy and surprised. "Allow me, missy," he persisted, "to pass you the strawberry jam and the muffins." "I'll have some jam, thank you," she replied. He looked round and chuckled. "Oh, I say, that little gal said thank you before she got it," he exclaimed. "There ain't no muffins, and I've eaten all the jam," which made Tommy choke with laughter. Barbara flushed. "That's a very stupid joke," she pronounced severely. And rude, too. It's a pity you weren't taught to behave better when you were young." "So I was," said the clown, with his mouth full. "Then you've forgotten it," said she. "You're nothing but a big baby, that you are." "Yeah," retorted the clown. "So are you a big baby," which, even as Tommy saw, was not a very brilliant reply. It was a singular fact about the clown that the slightest check seemed to take away all his brilliancy. "You know you're not telling the truth now," said Barbara, so contemptuously that the clown began to weep bitterly. "She says I don't speak the truth," he complained, "and she knows it will be my aunt's birthday last Tuesday." "You great silly thing, what has that to do with it?" cried Barbara, indignantly. "What is there to cry about?" Which very nearly made Tommy quarrel with her, for why couldn't she be polite to his friend? However, the clown soon dried his eyes on the tablecloth and recovered his cheerfulness, and presently he noticed the Times lying folded by Tommy's papa's plate. "Oh, I say, mister," he said, "shall I air the newspaper for yer?" "Thank you, if you will," was the polite reply. He shook it all out in one great sheet, and wrapped it round him, and waddled about in it until Tommy nearly rolled off his seat with delight. "When you've quite done with it," his father was saying mildly, as the clown made a great hole in the middle and thrust his head out of it with a bland smile. "I'm only just looking through it," he explained. "You can have it now," and he rolled it up in a tight ball and threw it at his host's head. Breakfast was certainly not such a dull meal as usual that morning, Tommy thought, but he wished his people would show a little more appreciation instead of sitting there all stiff and surprised. He was afraid the clown would feel discouraged. When his papa undid the ball, the paper was found to be torn into long strips, which delighted Tommy, but his father, on the other hand, seemed annoyed, possibly because it was not so easy to read in that form. Meanwhile the clown busied himself in emptying the butter dish into his pockets, and this did shock the boy a little, for he knew that it was not polite to pocket things at meals, and wondered how he could be so nasty. Breakfast was over at last, and the clown took Tommy's arm and walked upstairs to the first floor with him. "Who's in there?" he asked, as they passed the spare bedroom. "Granny," said the boy. "She's staying with us, only she always has breakfast in her room, you know." "Why, you don't mean to say you've got a granny?" cried the clown, with joy. "You are a nice little boy. Now we'll have some fun with her." Tommy felt doubtful whether she could be induced to join them so early in the morning, and said so. "You knock, and say you've got a present for her, if she'll come out," suggested the clown. "But I haven't," objected Tommy. "Wouldn't that be a story?" He had unaccountably forgotten his old fondness for cells. "Of course it would," said the clown. "I'm always telling of 'em, I am." Tommy was shocked once more, as he realized that his friend was not a truthful clown. But he knocked at the door nevertheless, and asked his grandmother to come out and see a friend of his. "Wait 1 minute, my boy," she answered, "and I'll come out." Tommy was surprised to see his companion preparing to lie, face downwards, on the mat just outside the door. "Get up," he said. "You'll trip Grandma up if you stay there." "That's what I'm doing it for, stupid," said the clown. "But it will hurt her." "Nothing hurts old women," said the clown. "I've tripped up 'hundreds of 'em, and I ought to know." "Well, you shan't trip up my granny, anyhow," said Tommy, stoutly, for he was not a bad-hearted boy, and his grandmother had given him a splendid box of soldiers on Christmas Day. "Don't come out, Granny, it's a mistake," he shouted. The clown rose with a look of disgust. "You call this actin' like a friend to me?" he demanded. "Well," said Tommy, apologetically, "she's my granny, you see." "She ain't my granny, and if she was, I'd let you trip her up, I would. I ain't selfish. I shan't stop with you any longer." "Oh, do," said Tommy. "We'll go and play somewhere else." "Well," said the clown, relenting, "if you're a good boy, you shall see me make a butter slide in the hall." Then Tommy saw how he had wronged him in thinking he had pocketed the butter out of mere greediness, and he felt ashamed and penitent. The clown made a beautiful slide, though Tommy wished he would not insist upon putting all the butter that was left down his back. "There's a ring at the bell," said the clown. "I'll open the door. You hide and see the fun." So Tommy hid himself round a corner as the door opened. "Walk in, sir," said the clown politely. "Master Tommy in?" said a jolly, hearty voice. It was dear old Uncle John, who had taken him to the pantomime the night before. "I thought I'd look in and see if he would care to come with me to the Crystal—" "Oh!" And there was a scuffling noise and a heavy bump. Tommy ran out, full of remorse. Uncle John was sitting on the tiles rubbing his head and, oddly enough, did not look at all funny. "Oh, Uncle!" cried the boy. "You're not hurt? I didn't know it was you." "I'm a bit shaken, my boy, that's all," said his uncle. "One doesn't come down like a feather at my age." And he picked himself up slowly. "Well, I must get home again," he said. "No Crystal Palace to-day, Tommy, after this. Good-bye." And he went slowly out, leaving Tommy with the feeling that he had had enough of slides. He even wiped the flooring clean again with a waterproof and the clothes brush, though the clown, who had been hiding, tried to prevent him. "We ain't 'ad 'arf the fun of it yet," he complained. He always spoke in rather a common way, as Tommy began to notice with pain. "I've had enough," said Tommy. "It was my Uncle John who slipped down that time, and he's hurt, and he'd come to take me to the Crystal Palace." "Well, he hadn't come to take me," said the clown. "You are stingy about your relations, you are. You ain't 'arf a boy for a bit of fun." Tommy felt this rebuke very much. He had so hoped to gain the clown's esteem, but he would not give in. He only suggested humbly that they should go up into the playroom. The playroom was at the top of the house, and Barbara and two sisters of Tommy's were playing there when they came in, the clown turning on his toes and making awful faces. The two little girls ran into a corner and seemed considerably frightened by the stranger's appearance, but Barbara reassured them. "Don't take any notice," she said. "It's only a horrid friend of Tommy's. He won't interfere with us." "Oh, Barbara," the boy protested. "He's awfully nice if only you knew him. He can make you laugh. Do let us play with you. He wants to, and he won't be rough." "Do," pleaded the clown. "I'll behave so pretty." "Well," said Barbara, "mind you do, then, or you shan't stop." And for a little while he did behave himself. Tommy showed him his new soldiers, and he seemed quite interested. And then he had a ride on a rocking horse, and was so sorry when it broke down under him, and after that he came suddenly upon a beautiful doll which belonged to the youngest sister. "Do let me nurse it," he said, and the little girl gave it up timidly. Of course he nursed it the wrong way up, and at last forgot and sat down on it, the head, which was wax, being crushed to pieces. Tommy was in fits of laughter at the droll face he made as he held out the crushed doll at arm's length, and looked at it with one eye shut, exclaiming, "Poor thing! What a pity! I do 'ope I 'aven't made its 'ead ache." But the two little girls were crying bitterly in one another's arms, and Barbara turned on the clown with tremendous indignation. "You did it on purpose. You know you did," she said. "Go away, little girl. Don't talk to me," said the clown, putting Tommy in front of him. "Tommy," she said, "what did you bring your friend up here for? He only spoils everything he's allowed to touch. Take him away." "Barbara," pleaded Tommy, "he's a visitor, you know." "I don't care," she replied. "Mr. Clown, you shan't stay here. This is our room, and we don't want you. Go away." She walked towards him looking so fierce that he backed hastily. "Go downstairs," she said, pointing to the door. "You too, Tommy, for you encouraged him." "Nya, nya, nya," said the clown, a sound by which he intended to imitate her anger. "Oh, please, I'm going. Remember me to your mother." And he left the room, followed rather sadly by Tommy, who felt that Barbara was angry with him. "That's a very disagreeable little girl," remarked the clown, confidently, when they were safe outside, and Tommy thought it wiser to agree. "What have you got in your pockets?" he asked presently, seeing a hard bulge in his friend's white trunks. "Only some of your nice soldiers," said the clown, and walked into the schoolroom, where there was a fire burning. "Are they brave?" he asked. "Very," said Tommy, who had quite persuaded himself that this was so. "Look here, we'll have a battle." He thought a battle would keep the clown quiet. "Here's 2 cannon and peas, and you shall be the French and I'll be English." "All right," said the clown, and took his share of the soldiers and calmly put them all in the middle of the red-hot coals. "I want to be quite sure they can stand the fire first," he explained. And then, as they melted, he said, "There, you see, they're all running away. I never see such cowards." Tommy was in a great rage, and could almost have cried, if it had not been babyish, for they were his best regiments which he could see dropping down into great glittering stars on the ashes below. "That's a caddish thing to do," he said, with difficulty. "I didn't give them to you to be put in the fire." "Oh, I thought you did," said the clown. "I beg your pardon," and he threw the rest after them as he spoke. "You're a beast!" cried Tommy, indignantly. "I've done with you after this." "Oh, no, you ain't," he returned. "I have, though," said Tommy. "We're not friends any longer." "All right," said the clown. "When I'm not friends with any one, I take and use the red-hot poker on 'em," and he put it in the fire to heat as he spoke. This terrified the boy. It was no use trying to argue with the clown, and he had seen how he used a red-hot poker. "Well, I'll forgive you this time," he said hastily. "Let's come away from here." "I tell you what," said the clown. "You and me'll go down to the kitchen and make a pie." Tommy forgot his injuries at this delightful idea. He knew what the clown's notion of pie making would be. "Yes," he said eagerly, "that will be jolly. Only, I don't know," he added doubtfully, "if cook will let us." However, the clown soon managed to secure the kitchen to himself. He had merely to attempt to kiss the cook once or twice, and throw the best dinner service at the other servants, and they were left quite alone to do as they pleased. What fun it was, to begin with! The clown brought out a large deep dish, and began by putting a whole turkey and an unskinned hare in it out of the larder. After that he put in sausages, jam, pickled walnuts, and lemons, and in short, the first thing that came to hand. "It ain't 'arf full yet," he said at last, and he looked gravely into the pie. "No," said Tommy, sympathetically. "Can't we get anything else to put in?" "The very thing!" cried the clown. "You're just about the right size to fill it up. My, what a pie it's going to be, eh?" And he caught up his young friend, just as he was, rammed him into the pie, and poured sauce on him. But he kicked and howled until the clown grew seriously displeased. "Why can't you lay quiet?" he said angrily, "like the turkey does? You don't deserve to be put into such a nice pie." "If you make a pie of me," said Tommy, artfully, "there'll be nobody to look on and laugh at you, you know." "No more there won't," said the clown, and allowed him to crawl out, all over sauce. It was a pity, he declared, because he fitted so nicely, and now they would have to look about for something else. But he contrived to make a shift with the contents of the cook's work-basket, which he poured in, reels, pincushions, wax, and all. He had tried to put the kitchen cat in too, but she scratched his hands and could not be induced to form the finishing touch to the pie. How the clown got the paste and rolled it, and made Tommy in a mess with it, and how the pie was finished at last, would take too long to tell here, but somehow it was not quite such capital fun as he had expected. It seemed to want the pantomime music or something, and then Tommy was always dreading lest the clown should change his mind at the last minute and put him in the pie after all. Even when it was safely in the oven, he had another fear lest he should be made to stay and eat it, for it had such peculiar things in it that it could not be at all nice. Fortunately, as soon as it was put away, the clown seemed to weary of it himself. "Let me and you go and take a walk," he suggested. Tommy caught at the proposal, for he was fast becoming afraid of the clown, and felt really glad to get him out of the house. So he got his cap, and the clown put on a brown overcoat and a tall hat, under which his white and red face looked stranger than ever, and they sallied forth together. Once Tommy would have thought it a high privilege to be allowed to go out shopping with a clown, but, if the plain truth must be told, he did not enjoy himself so very much after all. People seemed to stare at them so, for one thing, and he felt almost ashamed of his companion, whose behavior was outrageously ridiculous. They went to all the family tradesmen, to whom Tommy was, of course, well known, and the clown would order the most impossible things, and say they were for Tommy. Once he even pushed him into a large draper's shop, full of pretty and contemptuous young ladies, and basely left him to explain his presence as he could. But it was worse when they happened to meet an Italian boy with a tray of plaster images on his head. "Here's a lark!" said the clown, and elbowed Tommy against him in such a way that the tray slipped and all the images fell to the ground with a crash. It was certainly amusing to see all the pieces rolling about, but while Tommy was still laughing, the boy began to howl and denounce him to the crowd which gathered round them. The crowd declared that it was a shame, and that Tommy ought to be made to pay for it, and no one said so more loudly and indignantly than the clown. Before he could escape, he had to give his father's name and address, and promise that he would pay for the damage, after which he joined the clown, who had strolled on, with a heavy heart, for he knew that that business would stop all his pocket money for years after he was grown up. He even ventured to reproach his friend. "I shan't sneak of you, of course," he said, "but you know you did it." The clown's only answer to this was a reproof for telling wicked stories. At last they passed a confectioner's, and the clown suddenly remembered that he was hungry, so they went in, and he borrowed 6 pence from Tommy, which he spent in buns. He ate them all himself slowly, and was so very quiet and well behaved all the time that Tommy hoped he was sobering down. They had gone a little way from the shop when he found that the clown was eating tarts. "You might give me one," said Tommy, and the clown, after looking over his shoulder, actually gave him all he had left, filling his pockets with them, in fact. "I never saw you buy them," he said wonderingly, which the clown said was very peculiar, and just then an attendant came up breathlessly. "You forgot to pay for those tarts," she said. The clown replied that he never took pastry. She insisted that they were gone, and he must have taken them. "It wasn't me, please," said the clown. "It was this little boy done it. Why, he's got a jam tart in his pocket now. Where's a policeman?" Tommy was so thunderstruck by this treachery that he could say nothing. It was only what he might have expected, for had not the clown served the pantaloon exactly the same the night before? But that did not make the situation any funnier now, particularly as the clown made such a noise that 2 real policemen came hurrying up. Tommy did not wait for them. No one held him, and he ran away at the top of his speed. What a nightmare sort of run it was! The policemen chasing him, and the clown urging them on at the top of his voice. Everybody he passed turned round and ran after him too. Still he kept ahead. He was surprised to find how fast he could run, and all at once he remembered that he was running the opposite way from home. Quick as thought he turned up the first street he came to, hoping to throw them off the scent and get home by a back way. For the moment he thought he had got rid of them, but just as he stopped to take breath, they all came whooping and hallooing round the corner after him, and he had to scamper on, panting and sobbing, and staggering almost out of his mind with fright. If only he could get home first and tell his mother! But they were gaining on him, and the clown was leading and roaring with delight as he drew closer and closer. He came to a point where 2 roads met. It was round another corner, and they could not see him. He ran down one, and, to his immense relief, found that they had taken the other. He was saved, for his house was quite near now. He tried to hasten, but the pavement was all slushy and slippery, and his boots felt heavier and heavier, and to add to his misery, the pursuers had found out their mistake. As he looked back, he could see the clown galloping round the corner and hear his yell of discovery. "Oh, Fairy, dear Fairy," he gasped, "save me this time. I do like your part best now." She must have heard him and taken pity, for in a second he had reached his door, and it flew open before him. He was not safe even yet, so he rushed upstairs to his bedroom and bounced, just as he was, into his bed. If they come up, I'll pretend I'm ill, he thought, as he covered his head with the bedclothes. They were coming up, all of them. There was a great trampling on the stairs. He heard the clown officiously shouting, "This way, Mr. Policeman, sir," and then a tremendous battering at his door. He lay there shivering under the blankets. Perhaps they'll think the door's locked and go away, he tried to hope, and the battering went on not quite so violently. "Master Tommy? Master Tommy!" It was Sarah's voice. They had got her to come up and tempt him out. Well, she wouldn't, then. And then, oh, horror, the door was thrown open. He sprang out of bed in an agony. "Sarah, Sarah, keep them out!" he gasped. "Don't let them take me away." "Lor, Master Tommy, keep who out?" said Sarah, wonderingly. The clown and the policeman," he said. "I know they're behind the door." "There, there," said Sarah. "Why, you ain't done dreaming yet. That's what comes of going out to these late pantomimes. Rub your eyes. It's nearly 8 o'clock." Tommy could have hugged her. It was only a dream, after all, then. As he stood there, shivering in his nightgown, the nightmare clown began to melt away, though even yet some of the adventures he had gone through seemed too vivid to be quite imaginary. Singularly enough, his Uncle John actually did call that morning, and to take him to the Crystal Palace, too. And as there was no butter slide for him to fall down on, they were able to go. On the way, Tommy told him all about his unpleasant dream. "I shall always hate a clown after this, Uncle," he said as he concluded. "My good Tommy," said his uncle, "when you are fortunate enough to dream a dream with a moral in it, don't go and apply it the wrong way up. The real clown, like a sensible man, keeps his fun for the place where it is harmless and appreciated, and away from the pantomime conducts himself like any other respectable person. Now your dream clown, Tommy—" "I know," said Tommy, meekly. "Should you think the pantomime was good here, Uncle John?"